The Toronto Maple Leafs are looking to end their 57-year Stanley Cup drought. Is this the year that they do it? I've got Toronto Maple Leafs fan in van, TML fan in van, Marty, joining me to talk some Leafs hockey. 1420 Sports Bar coming at you. Let's get into her.
The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
1420 Sports Bar Podcast, for beer of sports talk and a whole lot more. Join host Brent Radlinsky as he bellies up to the bar and gets the conversations going that'll make you think you're sitting in your local watering room. It's sports, beer, and shenanigans, so sit back, grab a few beers, and let's get into it. The 1420 Sports Bar Podcast, for beer of sports talk and a whole lot more. Today's show, as always, is brought to you by SeatGeek.com, the SeatGeek app. Use promo code 1420pod or 1240seat at SeatGeek.com today and save yourself $20 on your first purchase. Remember, we are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Go to bellyupsports.com for all their great articles and other podcasts as well. Today, a special guest joins us to talk some Toronto Maple Leafs. Every once in a while, you scroll through the Twitter machine, and sometimes you find somebody that piques your interest a little bit, and that's what happened with my next guest, Marty, with the TML fan in van. How you doing today, Marty?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Yeah, I'm a Leafs guy from way back. My cousin actually played for Leafs back in the 80s, so I was kind of born into it. I haven't been able to get out of it, and the Leafs are having a heck of a year, 15-7-2. They got a game tonight, very winnable stretch of games right now, but tonight they got the Nashville Predators in town. Something that's going. There's a lot going right with this Leafs team, Marty. What's gone right so far for the Toronto Maple Leafs that you maybe didn't think was going to work out for them this year?
Well, I think everybody's talking Craig Berube and goaltending, and I think that's the truth. I mean, Chris Tanev was a huge upgrade on defense, and the goaltending has been great. I think the biggest difference, though, is Craig has got the team to buy into north-south hockey, and also a sort of different style that's wait for the other team to make a mistake hockey, which is honestly, you follow the Leafs, so you know that the Boston Bruins, that's how the Boston Bruins have played and been successful with maybe just a net forward team, which is goaltending out. And the Leafs, I mean, they're not built from the net forward. They're built from Austin Matthews down, and somehow it's working. So, if he implemented those systems and it didn't work, then I think we'd be talking about something else, but it's working right now.
You mentioned Austin Matthews. He was out for X amount of games, 8 games, I think it was. And people thought that the roof was going to cave in, as it usually does with the Leafs. Everybody always hopes for the best, expects the worst when it comes to Toronto Maple Leafs hockey, but it didn't happen this time around. And you listen, we talked a little bit off air, but you listen to the talking heads on TV, and they're giving a lot of credit to Mitch Marner stepping up a little bit and saying, yeah, he's the guy. Was a leader in the dressing room, a leader on and off the ice with this Leafs team. What's Mitchie Marner been to this Leafs team so far this season?
Well, isn't it surprising that Mitch Marner, who was picked 4th overall in 2014, took the London Knights to the Memorial Cup, in his 6th all-time in points for a team that's over 100 years old, was able to lead the team while Austin was out. Isn't that surprising? Isn't it surprising that John Tavares, a 33-year-old former elite center for the New York Islanders and then the Leafs, isn't it interesting that John Tavares is having another great year with Mitch Marner on his flank? Isn't it interesting that Mitch Marner is probably the reason that the Toronto Maple Leafs are having the great season they're having? I mean, he's the MVP for me always, and he's always in my heart and soul. I love Mitch because he represented the big change when I've been following the Leafs since the early 90s. But Mitch to me represents what this team is about. He's the heart and soul of the team, and I'm a big fan, and I'm really happy to see him carry the burden when Matthews was out. Willie did great too. Let's be honest. Nylander is a great hockey player, and he puts the puck in the net. And they have 4 really, really solid stars on that team who know what to do. And so if one of them goes down, the others carry the load. Like last year, Mitch was out, and Austin carried the load. Nearly scored 70 goals. So there you go. But yeah, Mitch has had a great year. really great year so far.
Yeah, you were saying that tongue in cheek about being surprised. So basically, like, and everybody hacks on what these guys make, and I'm never one to besmirch anybody what they get paid, because somebody, no, yeah, they're not worth it. Well, somebody's paying them, so they must be worth it. And then people talk about the Marner contract, how he wouldn't have got it anywhere else, but you know what? He did get it somewhere, and he's been everything he's supposed to be doing. So it's not a surprise that he's doing this stuff, like you were saying. Like, it's very that people act surprised for some reason that he's a great hockey player, and the numbers are there year in, year out. Yeah, they haven't gotten to the promised land, but that's not a Mitch Marner problem at all. Like, or fault, I guess. You can't just blame Marner, but like just the way things that happen in the playoffs. But how you're tongue in cheek there with the Marner situation. It's when people see him doing well, it's almost like there's people who want him to fail for some reason, and that's the Toronto media, like you said off air a little bit. The Toronto media is hard on the kid because he's a local product. So it's an odd situation where he does well. They're almost disappointed that he's doing well.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I'm kind of a detractor on social media. I mean, I'm blocked by so many mainstream media members. I'm having a hard time keeping track. But the thing with Mitch is that his camp is his problem, and everybody knows that. The media knows that. They get messages from his camp all the time, whether that be his agent or maybe his bodyguard or some other people, his wife, or these are rumors. These are just rumors. Don't quote me.
His father hadn't done him very many favors over the years either, right?
Of course. But
that's well documented. But
the thing about Mitch is he goes out there and plays hockey, and it's easy to be a fan of a player that plays like him. Like Quinn Hughes is in Vancouver, or Elias Pettersson is very similar. The local media is very similar on Elias Pettersson out here in Vancouver as the Toronto media is on Mitch. But one thing I'd say about when it comes to contracts, I view all hockey players as underpaid. If you compare baseball players, you compare football players, you compare basketball players.
You're talking my language,
yeah. They're all underpaid, and every NHL hockey player deserves probably at least a 10 to 15% pay bump. Mitch's salary doesn't matter because next year the salary cap's going up $9 million. The year after that, it's going up $8 million. So Mitch's contract, he could get the max for the max, and I'd be fine with it. I'd be fine with keeping Mitch. Because if you look at Ottawa, you look at Buffalo, you look at Detroit, you look at these teams in the East who are still flailing in the wind trying to make the playoffs. Well, the Leafs have made the playoffs every year since Mitch was on the team. And that's because they have Mitch on the team. Because when Austin goes down, guess what? Mitch is there. When Mitch goes down, Austin's there. You need talent to win, and we got the talent. So why complain about it? Why bitch about the contract? Just be happy we're in the dance, for crying out loud.
Yeah, they do make it look easy in the regular season. They're on a really good stretch right now. Like I said earlier, they have a chance to win some hockey games right now and put some and try to get some distance. I mean, they're first in the East. They've got a couple games in hand on Florida right now, and it's such a, like, once you do get the playoffs, it's winning's hard no matter what level. I think the Stanley Cup is the hardest thing to win because you got to win 4 games four times, and that's tough. And the Leafs have to go through Tampa or go through Florida or go through Boston, and it's tough to do. Is this team poised to do it? And I think you like you said earlier on, Craig Berube with his hard-nosed player when he played, and then when he won that cup with the Blues back in 2019, was this coaching change away from Keefe something that just had to be done to go to Berube?
I think to win in the playoffs, you have to change your style. And that begins in October. Well, before that, September. Yeah. I think that Sheldon Keefe is a great coach. Berube, though, is a different style of coach. He's a motivator, and he's simplifying the game. It's no secret that in the playoffs, hitting and bigness is more important than other metrics, maybe, if you will, and letting the game come to you, letting the other team make a mistake over 7 games. That's what the Bruins did to the Leafs. I mean, the Leafs went to 7 games every series except for one, and that was against the Caps, and that was the first year they were in the playoffs. And so, yes, before any of your subscribers mention it. I am aware of the Columbus Blue Jackets series, but
we don't really talk about that a whole bunch.
every series went to 7 games and didn't they all go to overtime? But for the Caps series. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that every series was basically a coin flip. So we were almost there. And the one time we broke through, we were too injured to get past Florida, who went on to make the Stanley Cup final. So here we are. And we have to win enough games to get into the playoffs. That's how you win the Stanley Cup. So you're absolutely right. 82 games have to be played. And the team that's being iced in December or November or October so far isn't going to be the team that's iced in May. And so what does that team look like? And I mean, that's Treliving, and that's Craig Berube, and that's Brendan Shanahan to figure out. But right now things are looking good. And, you have to weather a lot of storms to get there. And I think the difference between the Leafs this year is it looks like Florida, it looks like Boston, it looks like Tampa are all fading a little bit. And that's, maybe we can jockey for a better wildcard position. Maybe we can play a broken down New York team, or maybe we can even play a even worse Buffalo team or a Detroit team in the first round. And then we can sweep them and then go into the second round and maybe make some noise. That would be an ideal, right?
That would be ideal, because it's tough, and if you're playing 7-7 and holy, you ain't doing a whole bunch. You think when the Kings won those Stanley Cups back, they were sweeping through things, and it was unbelievable how they just got it done. And they made it look so easy. And it's just when you talk about goaltending earlier on, everybody, you show me a good goalie, I'll show you a good coach, and that's what they've got right now with their tandem going forward. And it's something that's always been a bit of and every team, there's a lot of, I don't know if you agree with me here, there's a lot of adequate goalies in the league. There's not a bunch of superstars. And so if you have a guy who just doesn't lose you games, I think that's where NHL goaltending is kind of at right now. Just be good. You don't have to be great, be good, because they're all goalies. I think they kind of play the same now. They're all really big, the equipment, and it's just a different style of goaltending compared to back in the mid '90s, where guys were flailing, or the early '90s when guys were flailing all over the ice. So the Leafs have a couple of guys who are playing above average right now. What's your thoughts on their goaltending?
Again, I hate to beat an extremely dead horse, but you have great defense and you'll have great goaltending. Yeah. You have great team defense and you'll have great goaltending. I mean, look at Allmark in Ottawa, and I'm sure nobody in Ottawa predicted that they'd be still on the outside looking in and have everybody questioning Steve Stais. He picked up a great goalie, and it isn't magically turning the team around. I think the thing with Stolarz and the thing with Wall is they're both great goalies, and they're both big dudes. Yeah. And so big bodies that take up a lot of the net, and that's working because they have a guy like Chris Tanev, they have a guy like McCabe, they have a Stanley Cup winner in OEL. Let's be honest, he did win a Stanley Cup, so he must know something about defense. And I think Benoit is looking great this year, and I think he sits for a game and then he comes back and plays even harder. I love his work ethic. And then Connor Timmins, there's a reason they traded Timothy Liljegren, because Connor Timmins is what they had hoped they had in Liljegren, they have in Timmins. Timmins is a right shot defenseman who can play defense. Shocking. But I think that Berube's got all of the defensemen back to the goaltender to play a defense first style, which is really working for the goaltending. And it looks great.
Yeah, Alvin Ekman-Larsson, he got that big contract with the Coyotes a lot of years ago now. And he was supposed to be the next coming of whoever you want to, Scott and Niedermayer, I guess we could throw a name out there. He was supposed to be this guy. And he didn't, he was never bad. He just had I don't want a bad contract, not great for him, but a bad contract in what he was, the numbers that, or whatever he was putting up. And it just didn't, people thought they weren't getting their bang for their buck. But if he's slotted as a 4-5 guy, that's probably where he should be, not a 1-2. It's just kind of one of those things.
And, the best example of this is Dion Phaneuf, right? Dion Phaneuf gets the big contract, and then he puts the anchor of weight on his entire body. Yeah. And then he never lived up to it in Toronto, even though he actually had a few good years in Toronto, and he got them to the playoffs, for crying out loud. Like the one Randy Kyle year, it was 4-1. But yeah, I think OEL, when he was in Vancouver, a lot of that pressure was on him, and then they got Quinn Hughes and didn't need him anymore. So then he felt, well, his salary was too high. So in the end, it didn't work out in Vancouver, and it's worked out well in Toronto. He went to Florida and rejuvenated his career. And I'm a fan. Like I listened to my pal Anthony Petrielli on the Maple Leafs Hot Stove podcast, and he was kind of throwing some shade at OEL the other day. But the last game I watched on Monday, I felt that OEL he simplified his game that night. Against Florida, he didn't look good, but against on the Monday night game, he looked good. And it plays gritty. He gets the puck out of the zone, and then he maybe will take a chance here and there on net, and it's working for him. Simplifying your game in Toronto is a good idea. It's like playing simple hockey. That's what I like about Berube. He gets players to play to their strengths. Simplify your game, and then the puck will go in the net eventually. Just let the game come to you, right? And I think that's working for OEL in Toronto so far. And I'm a big fan of Morgan Rielly, and we have to talk about him because we're talking defense. And Team Canada, I mean, I don't know if the roster's announced.
I saw that Sweden got finalized earlier on today, and I haven't seen the others yet, but they're coming through slowly. I guess.
If Rielly is left off of Team Canada, that is a major omission to me. He is a great, great defenseman, and I think he's absolutely underrated. I don't care. Everybody can come at me. I don't care. He's an underrated defenseman. I saw him skate with the Marlies way back in Abbotsford when they played the Abbotsford Heat here in the Lower Mainland, and he was the best skater on the ice with a bunch of men. Like that was like a bunch of waived Robidas Island players. Tim Connolly was on the bench. This is how long ago it was now.
Such a long time ago, yeah.
But Rielly is. I don't think he's having the really greatest season, but he is a great defenseman, and he's a great puck-moving defenseman, and I'm a huge, huge fan. And I think if he's left off of Team Canada for Parayko, Colton Parayko sucks. No offense, he sucks. He sucks. I don't care if he's Canadian.
I agree. That Four Nations Cup hasn't. I don't know about like what it's like down Lower Mainland, but around here it hasn't got a whole bunch of juice yet. Like that's something that just kind of we know it's going to happen, but it's just like all right. Like nobody's it. Like maybe with the naming of the teams and get the holiday season and the World Juniors are happening, so people get their Team Canada fever and that stuff. But it hasn't. Like what's your thoughts on this sport? Like it's been they're going to have this tournament and. Okay.
They should have it in the summer. It's a joke. I think that they did a few years ago, not a few years ago, like a decade ago, and it was in like September. And that was interesting to me. Like
when they had the Young Stars team and they had a few different, Yeah,
I think the NHL is just like, I'm a critic of Gary Bettman, as you probably could tell. I think that he is out of touch. I think the NHL is out of touch. I think what Amazon Prime is doing, they've been doing they've had 8 games and they're already innovating. I'm like blown away by their coverage of the game I love. And I just think that what the NBA does is what the NHL should copy. Whatever the NBA does, copy that, and you're probably going to create some buzz and excitement. And I really like the mid-season tournaments that they've created. Yeah. That's interesting to me. That's way better than this Four Nation Cup. You could ice 10 Team Canadas and we'll probably still win. I just think it's boring. Like Canada versus in the end, it's going to be Canada versus the US, and the US is going to win because they have Austin Matthews and better goaltending. There you go.
It's actually at that point, like, okay. And then this is going to happen. That's going to happen. And Hellebuck's better than everybody that Canada's got.
Like do something interesting, like do co-ed. Here, there's something interesting. Do co-ed Team Canada, co-ed America, co-ed Sweden, co-ed Finland. There's something interesting.
Well, then that pushes the women's league, right? So
exactly.
That's not the worst idea at all. That's some groundbreaking stuff here in the 1420 podcast on a Wednesday afternoon.
The NHL is so boring. Like, come up with something new and interesting, and I think more people would talk about it. I just think that the Four Nations Cup, like, let's be honest, there's a lot of great Russian hockey players. I don't know. They could have found a way to include those Russian hockey players, regardless of how you feel about Russia right now. Russia and the Ukraine conflict is part of the reason why they're not involved. Probably the doping scandal in the Olympics is the other reason, but there's a ton of great hockey players from Russia.
Yeah.
There's a ton of great hockey players from other countries too. Like, why not have a Euro team? I don't know. It's just really boring to me. It's like,
well, you're probably old enough to remember the Canada Cup, right? Now how great those were, and it was always a great entertainment. But it changed with the way the NHLers are playing, and the European guys are playing in the NHL now, and they weren't as much back then. But that was always such a great tournament, six to eight teams, whatever it was. I can't remember, but that was great. This one has no buzz, no. Yeah, they'll sell their T-shirts and their hats and their jerseys and whatever, and that'll be about it when it comes down to it.
It's boring.
That's it.
I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you see that I am not like blowing smoke here. Like, am I going to watch it? I don't know. Maybe. Canada's going to lose
the first one of those World Cup of hockeys. Not the first one in '96. I think that one was, but there was one in 2003 or 2004. I can't remember. And I remember watching it, but there was nothing. All right, like you didn't even cheer when Canada won. You're like, all right, that's done. Like, yeah. Yeah. Anyways, let's get back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Ryan Reeves got that suspension for I don't want to say trying to decapitate somebody, but he took a pretty good run at Darnell Nurse there, and he's going to be coming back in the lineup. And I'm a big proponent if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I like Reeves brings a certain element to the lineup for sure. But the Leafs were on quite the roll without Reeves in there. Do you stick with your younger guys and see what they can do, or do you have to get Reeves back in?
I mean, Reeves was suspended, and did he deserve 5? No, but that's another story. I think Darnell should keep his head up if he's coming around the net like that. Yeah. I've been watching hockey long enough to know Grapes used to say, "Keep your head up, kid."
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge Don Cherry fan, but I watched hockey long enough to know that that's like rule number 1. Yeah. And, Reeves deserved the suspension, I guess. But here's the thing about, was it 2 games later that Matthew Nyes was out with a concussion for a similar play? And you have to ask yourself, as a fan of the game, would that hit have happened had the player known that Reeves was on the bench? Because what ended up happening was the game kind of got out of control for a period or two, and that's because the refs don't call penalties in the NHL consistently. So I think Reeves, like classic old school hockey, you put Reeves on the bench and then the shit doesn't happen. Yep. So he's not going to play more than 7 minutes. He's not great at skating, but he can still lay a huge hit, and he's fairly, like, his numbers are okay. I think that a lot of people are going to say, well, is he necessary in 2024? I think he is. I still think he is, sadly. And
I still think that has an element to it. The little tap on the laces. Hey, watch what you're doing, because we got our guy over there. Right.
There was a missed call the other night in Montreal. It was Columbus playing Montreal, and Evason went crazy. Well, if there's a missed call, you need Reeves. That's the thing. Like, you need guys like that, because unfortunately you need people to police the game, because the refs don't fricking do it. So Gary Bettman doesn't do it. George Paris doesn't do it. So somebody's got to do it. And so you have to have the policeman on the bench. And Reeves hasn't really fought anyone this year. I don't even think he's fought one player, but
I don't think so either. No.
But nobody will fight him because they know they'll lose. And I don't know. I think a lot of players on the opposition know he's on the bench, and they play differently because of that. It is what it is. Like, you can agree with me or disagree with me, but Darnell Nurse will keep his head up now when Ryan Reeves is on the ice.
No, I think that's one of those, you only touch a hot stove once, right? You learn your lesson pretty quick. You would hope, right? It's one of those things. So you just wonder, everything's coming up rosy for the Leafs right now, and you want to set yourself up in playoffs, like we discussed earlier on. For this team to be successful, you want to be able to, and you hate to give up a pat in the back for what Vegas has been doing to get guys in the injured reserve and however they've manipulated the cap, but having a guy like, and I don't really know the ins and outs of what Matthews his injury was. It's none of my business. But having a guy sit out for 8-9 games here and there, I don't think it's the worst thing. Like if you don't win the scoring race, who cares? If you don't get the Maurice Richard Trophy, who cares? Like I think having a guy sit out here and there doesn't hurt. If your playoff position's not going to get affected that much, do you do that again in say February and March? Hey, take a little bit of a break if we get our playoff spot kind of solidified.
I think a lot of players in the Leafs, whether it's Marner or Matthews or Riley, Tavares, those guys, or Nylander, I think if they don't get called to play on the All-Star team, they'll probably be stoked. I think Berube will be even happier. He'll be grinning ear to ear. I think that the Vegas kind of method, or also the Tampa method, which is put somebody on LTIR, a big contract, and then make a trade for somebody big. I think that is a strategy. I don't think that that's what the Leafs need to do. I actually think the Leafs have the team. They're probably going to make a couple minor little moves at the deadline, but because I think Fraser Minton is the answer. I watch him and I think, if they manage, he's decent. And if they manage him appropriately, which is, you don't play him every game, you use the carrot and the stick appropriately with him. I think you've got a player that can be your 3C, and that was the plan all along. I think that was the plan last year, but he ran out of steam. I think that was the plan at camp, but he got injured. But now he's here and he's got 5 points in 6 games or whatever it's been. And I don't know. I think, let's see what we have. Let's manage injuries well, and let's rotate some players in and out. Hakanpää in and out, Riley in and out, whoever it happens to be. They're really being careful with McCabe for good reason. Matthews in and out if they need to. I think that's just smart management of a team. We don't need to play in April. We don't need to play our top dogs in the last 5 games. Let's not go for the Rocket. Let's not go for the Hart. Let's go for the Cup. I think Matthews has basically insinuated that I'm done with personal trophies. I just want to win the Cup now. And, I do give McDavid credit last year. I think he put the entire team on his back and he got them to the Stanley Cup final. And that's a hell of an accomplishment for a team that, in my opinion, isn't well balanced. But McDavid is objectively the greatest hockey player I've ever seen. But Matthews is just a hair behind him. And I think that Matthews wants to be in the finals. And to get to the Stanley Cup final in Toronto, they're going to build statues for Austin Matthews if he even gets to the Eastern Conference final, because you and I both know that Doug Gilmour didn't go past Game 7 of the Eastern Conference final. And he has a statue out front of Scotiabank Arena, as does Wendell Clark. And if Mitch and Austin go all the way to the Stanley Cup finals, it'll be pretty hard for the detractors to not argue with me online when I say over and over, well, Mitch got to the Stanley Cup final, but your pal Wendell didn't, and neither did Dougie. And so I think that that's what they want now. They just want to go all the way, and if they do, I think the streets of Toronto will be paved with gold for a bunch of months. It'll make the Raptors celebration look like a child backyard birthday party. I think that it would be fantastic for hockey if the Leafs could win the Cup. And I think that that's what Shanahan wants. And I think that I trust Berube's sort of style right now. He's really focusing on, keeping the team playing for each other. And, on this topic, I got to say the Johnny Gaudreau story is tragic, very tragic. But, all hockey players have been stars. Okay. So what is the difference between the Columbus Blue Jackets this year without Johnny Gaudreau and a team like Detroit or Montreal or Ottawa, who objectively have probably a better team on paper? Well, the difference is these guys are all playing for each other in Columbus, and I respect that immensely. And I think Craig Berube's style tends to bring people together. That's what happened in St. Louis. He brought a team that was last place to the Stanley Cup final, and they won. So I think he's players everywhere have said this about him, that they'll run through the wall for the guy. And I think it's working in Toronto. You look at Mitch in interviews and he looks ultra focused and he looks ultra pissed off. And guess what? He's playing really well. Austin is the captain now. I think that's really worked. John is playing really well with Mitch on his wing. That's really working. Simple, tiny, obvious tweaks are working right now. And let's go all the way, baby.
I like you say they're build statues for these guys. If they can manage to win one, they're going to be naming schools after those boys. Like right across, not just Toronto, the GTA, right across Ontario. They'll be naming schools.
They'll
after
change
the
the name of
Toronto
the.
Maple
They'll
Leafs.
change the name of the province.
Everything. It'll be great. And said it here before on the show is that nothing brings two people together like dislike of a third, and that's what the Toronto Maple Leafs are. And when the Leafs are rolling and the Leafs are hot and the Leafs can, like back in the Gilmore days, like you alluded to, everybody was watching. No, like not everybody was cheering for the Leafs, but everybody was watching because people wanted to see the Leafs not succeed. A lot did, because a lot more Leafs fans came out of the woodworks back then. And every year when the Leafs are doing well, people watch. It's the same thing with the Yankees. It's the same kind of a situation there. That if the Leafs can find a way to get to the finals, the ratings will be through the roof. Not everybody cheering for them, but there'll be a lot of people definitely watching, and it'd be great. I think it'd be great for hockey right across the board. Like it really would be.
You're absolutely right, and I think that the Amazon Prime Monday night, it's no secret that there's a reason why the Leafs are on those Monday nights right now a lot.
Yeah.
Because they're the biggest game in town. I tell my partner they're the Taylor Swift of hockey teams, because you go and you try to buy Lululemon apparel for the Leafs, it's all sold out. Everybody else, you can buy any size you want. Yeah. But the Leafs is all sold out because they're the biggest game in town, and I'm not a fan of them because they're the big game in town. I'm an old Northern Ontario boy, but now living out on the West Coast. But they're easy to cheer for, and you can look at them differently being out here on the West Coast. Like, I'm sure you kind of look at the media in Toronto and you're like, why are they covering them that way? Why is
this how it is? No, I get it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think that the media pressure has always been really, really tough to wade through in Toronto. It's tough in New York. It's tough. It was tough for the Chicago Cubs, and they were able to break through. And the Dallas Cowboys is really hard for them. But if Toronto can win, I think the game of hockey is better for it because, everybody makes more money, man.
More eyeballs on anything. Do you, my wife flew out to your neck of the woods this morning for the Taylor Swift show. I think she's going on Friday. Has Swifty fever swept through your veins yet?
Oh yeah, I'm looking at tickets, trying to see if I can get tickets for my 9-year-old. If I can, that'd be great. If I can get them up for under 1,000, which is going to be almost impossible. But yeah, my brother's coming to town, and his wife and his daughter are going, and yeah, we're going to celebrate with them. We're going to celebrate Christmas actually with them because we won't get to see them at the Christmas break. But yeah, no, Taylor Swift got Swifty fever here.
Yeah, it's unreal. Like my wife got her seats back in, I think it was May, on like some Facebook group or something, and she got them for face value, and what she could resell them for. I'm like, holy, maybe
you can pay off your mortgage.
You can pay off a lot of stuff. I was like, holy cow!
We go to the Leafs once.
I couldn't believe. I was just like, oh, because she got club seats. Holy moly, what they're reselling! Maybe we could just put the DVD or something, a YouTube video on. We could turn the music up down here, but whatever. No, let's talk about the Leafs. Is there something that they could do? I mean, every team's going to be tweaking, and sometimes teams tweak because somebody else might, right? And is there something the Leafs can do? Is there a guy that you would reach out to, and maybe reach out to if you were Shanahan or Berube or Treliving, and maybe if you have a meeting, is there a guy that Marty would, if Marty was in charge, say, we need this guy will put us over the top, or he would be a super addition to what we have going so far?
Well, there's a couple guys playing tonight against the Leafs that I'd have back in a heartbeat. Ryan O'Reilly, he is a winner. He's a Craig Berube guy. And he didn't like our previous coach, and that's why he didn't sign in Toronto. But I think he would waive to go back to Toronto. It would cost a lot, so I don't know if the cost would be worth it. But I'd have him back, and I'd have Luke back in a second. I don't know if Luke would come because he moved to Nashville with his family. He's got a young family, but Ryan O'Reilly would be fantastic. That'd be a great choice for me. But let's go all in. Let's go real big. Let's get somebody who can score goals and that can skate real fast, and that's who I would go for. I don't know who those players are off the top of my head. Maybe some players in Seattle, maybe some players in Columbus, maybe some players in Calgary. Maybe there's a center in Calgary we could get. He used to play for the Leafs, but I don't know if we'll get that kind of player. But I don't think adding depth around the margins is going to work this time. I think we need to go in big for one guy, and that guy could be a guy like Ryan O'Reilly. it could be a guy like Nazem Kadri too, though.
I'd rather see it now rather than later, because a lot of those deadline moves don't really work. I get something, get the guy into the system now and get it rolling, because and prospects and picks and whatever, because I don't want to say the window's closing. You always hear about that, but do it now and get it done and say, let's do this. If we're going to do it, enough screwing around. Let's get this thing and see what we can do, because we're going to run out of years before you know it. Because I mean, these guys, like this core group's been together for a number of years now. And so how many more years do you got? Right. And that's the kicker. So you got to go for it. Prediction time. Is this the year, Marty, that they finally get it done? Like, is this the year? 67, you hear about it, blah, blah, blah. Haven't done it in my lifetime. Is this the one that you might, like, you feel on December the 4th, 2024? Is this the one you're thinking 6 months down the road that they got a shot?
I think in the current NHL, any team that makes the playoffs in the East has a chance, except for the wild card, has a chance to go deep. I'm going to predict the Eastern Conference Finals, but I'm not going to go beyond that. I think rewinding to your previous question, here we go. Here's a player, Trevor Zegras.
He needs a little bit of a reboot. He does.
Or Troy.
He's like Zegras. He came out of college hockey, went right after World Juniors that year to Anaheim, and he's skilled, talented, but he's kind of lost in Neverland out there, doing not much. He could use a reboot. There's no way he lost all that skill and talent. He just he's just in limbo land. That wouldn't be a bad pickup, and I don't think it would cost you a ton.
I think a winger that can score for the Leafs. I think Taylor Hall's not a bad choice either. I think Taylor Hall would cost a lot less, but I think a scoring winger to complement, ideally a left winger. Push Bobby McMahon down to the third line, and then we got pretty good third line with Fraser Minten, Bobby McMahon, maybe Yarncroke can play. And I think that would be a great addition. But is this our year? You look at Florida, they're not having a great season compared to last year. You look at Tampa, they're not having a great season compared to last year. They're beatable. Boston's beatable, really beatable. Washington, who cares? Because we're not going to play them till the second round, if we play them at all. So that leaves New York. And are New York going to fall out of contention? Hopefully, because then we can play either Buffalo or Ottawa. And, I would love to see, wouldn't you love to see Ottawa, Toronto, Battle of Ontario, just like the old days, Toronto sweeping them? Wouldn't you love to see that? That would
be great to see.
Here we go. I'll give former Leaf Travis Green one game. They win one game at home. It goes Toronto wins game 1, Ottawa wins game 2, Toronto goes the distance and goes into the second round. That would be wonderful.
Ottawa's just irrelevant. Like, they're just there, right? Well, it's just one. Yeah. Well, I think
Toronto will be good one day, but that isn't today.
No, they're not. And the Rangers, they're struggling, and things seem to be going from bad to worse daily with that team. And Boston's right for the picking for sure. And
Great.
And so I think that the Leafs have a definite shot. Just every team's got to stay healthy, and we know all the ins and outs of it. But I think the Leafs, they're just as good as anybody, or better than they're better than most. That's the thing. They're better than most.
This is a year where I think in the East things look like they could get to the Eastern Conference Final. And if they can get to Game 7, it's a coin toss, right? And Edmonton did it last year, so why not this year for the Leafs?
Almost being down 3-0 too somehow, So
I tell my buddies out here in Vancouver that it would really, really be fantastic to see the Leafs crush the Canucks in the Stanley Cup Final.
I agree. Then watch the city burn down again.
It Leafs in 6, baby. Let's go.
That would be great. You've been a Leaf fan for a long time, Northern Ontario boy. Who's your favorite of all time? Who's your favorite Toronto Maple Leaf of all time?
Well, it's got to be Mitch, but I think second is probably Sundin, right? I met Sundin years ago at a friend's gig, and he's super nice guy. He's huge. And he spent a minute with me, just a fan of music and hockey, and it was great to meet him. And I was always a fan of Matt's, and I also really liked Cujo and Belfour and Darcy Tucker, and
That crew was they didn't accomplish much, but that crew was fun to watch. Like I love Tucker, the way he would just full of grit no matter what, and always have a snarl on his face the way he played. If that like that, and the game has changed a lot compared to what it was back then. But having a guy like Tucker, if he had a little more skill onto that, to have a guy like that on your team, that wouldn't hurt. Every team be begging for a guy like that. That'd be a $9-10 million play nowadays.
Well, Darcy Tucker isn't really any different than Tom Wilson. I think Wilson's more talented, but Darcy Tucker was a pretty good player. It's too bad they had to trade Mike Johnson for him, because I really liked Mike Johnson. But I think, Pat Quinn's Leafs, they succeeded a lot more consistently than the 93 series. Like 93 was a big deal because nobody expected them to do what they did. But
rookie goaltender with Potvin and
totally. I think that Quinn, I have to say I'm a huge fan of Pat Quinn. I was a fan of him in Toronto. I was a fan of him in Vancouver. And I was a fan of him as a person. I've heard lots of stories from lots of people who knew him personally out here in Vancouver. I've spoken to some people who work for the Leafs who knew him really well. And I think, those kind of characters are missing in this game a little bit, but but they're not. There's guys like Berube, who's kind of like a Pat Quinn in a way. But I think of Pat and his family, just wonderful, wonderful individuals. So I was always a fan of him. And, it's great to see Craig coaching his team that he played for, and he wore number 16, Darcy Tucker's number 16. So there you go. Let's go. Go Leafs go, baby.
Go Leafs go. No, Marty, this is a lot of fun. Thank you for doing this, and keep up the good work on the Twitter machine, because you're very opinionated, which I quite enjoy. Starting when I saw your stuff the other night, I got a little bit of a kick out of a lot of it. That's why I reached out to you, because it was
good. Because a lot of my stuff is a joke, but I do hold the media to account. That's why people like Craig Button block me, because I call them out on their bullshit. And there are really good analysts in hockey. Justin Bourne is a great analyst. He blocked me, but anyway, he's great. And but I got to shout out my buddies at Maple Leaf Hot Stove. They're a great read. Everybody should always read them. They're one of the best in the business, if not the best in the business for blogs. I've been following them since 2008, and I'm stoked to be on this podcast with you. Talk Leafs. I'm happy to come back anytime.
No, we'll have to do it for sure. We'll make it a regular occurrence, especially as we get closer to after the new year. Once you get over your Swifty fever, mind you, like that, we got to make sure that doesn't overtake everything, and you hold the fort down in Lower Mainland there, because I can't imagine what my wife got herself into out there today, because I haven't heard from her since this morning when she landed, so she must be having a pretty good time out there. So
as a huge Beatles fan, I've heard many stories of the Beatles coming to Vancouver and playing in Toronto and playing all over North America, but this will eclipse that, because of course we live in a different era, and I think it's cool that Taylor Swift in her music, honestly, it's good. It's good music. So it is what it is.
Like, say what you want. It's positive. It's fun. Whatever. I'm 50 years old, and those earworms get into my skull too. So whatever. It doesn't it's positive things. And man, oh man, it's like my wife's friend from Medicine Hat. She came here, and then they went up this morning, and I was like, "What are you guys going to do when this is all over on Sunday?" They're like, I don't know, because she watches every show. I'm like, what are you guys gonna do? Yeah, I don't know. Guess they'll become a hockey fans, because
well, you have that huge letdown after a big concert, right? I mean, when I was a kid, I went to one of the big concerts I went to was the Red Hot Chili Peppers in '97, and I saw them again a couple years later. Saw Pearl Jam in Seattle, and I came out to Toronto. I went to Virgin Fest, saw a bunch of my favorite bands, including Oasis, on their last tour, and you feel that letdown the next day, and people are going to feel that. But the great thing with music is that it connects us all. And, Taylor is a big Leafs fan. She wore a Leafs jersey at Scotiabank when she played there. So go Leafs go, and go Taylor Swift go.
There we go. No, Marty, it's a lot of fun. We'll do it again. Thanks for coming on. And we'll get going and talk some more Leafs, and hopefully they can win a Stanley Cup for us aging Leafs fans for sure.
Well, let's start with Nashville tonight. Let's go.
There you go. Marty, thanks for doing this. We'll talk to you again very soon. Cheers, man.